Welcome back. Now let's take a look at how the markets are faring, and it's been a pretty mixed picture, particularly out in that Asian trade. Perhaps curses and worries about more stimulus perhaps coming back into the market. Do we perhaps need it? Well, with the rise of COVID-19 cases across the world, particularly in Europe and the United States, one may think that perhaps we certainly do. The Asian markets were a bit of a mixed bag this morning as well, with the Hang Seng sitting in negative territory, but the Shanghai Composite and the Nikkei did manage to tick a little bit higher than by close of trade. A mixed picture as well so far as well out in Europe, with the FTSE 100 and the CAC 40 sitting in red, but the DAX in Germany sitting in some positive numbers. Positivity though for the JSE All Share, that goes up 0.2% thus far. It's just above that 56,000 point mark. The big gainers so far have seemingly been the resource counters as they've gone up nearly 0.75%. They're actually more than that. 2/3% higher for the banking stocks though, helping to push the financials just that little bit higher. Industrials, however, not necessarily enjoying a good day, 0.25% down. Not enough though to push the JSE All Share lower, so it sits in some positivity there, 0.2% to the good. Checking in on the resource counters then as well, so Brent crude is down 0.8% there, and a lot of that really is still based on that supply-demand question that keeps rearing its head over the oil price then. Of course, more COVID-19 cases does mean that demand is set to slack in the rest of the world. Usage of oil is still sitting at pre-COVID-19 levels, particularly out in the United States. So that has dampened demand, and if there's less demand, you push the price even lower. And that's exactly what's happening there. Below $43 a barrel for now is where the Brent crude price sits. There seems to be a little bit more demand for gold now, and it's still sitting at levels not seen since November 2011. Again, $1,812 a fine ounce, up 0.2% there. So a very good picture for that gold price at present. It's $842 as well for platinum, so gaining 0.5%. So a pretty good day for those solid metals. Silver and palladium following suit as well, while light Brent crude out in the United States sits just above that $40 a barrel mark. It's pretty much a flat picture for the local currency though, not much to write home about on this front. A lot of questions will be asked as to whether Europe and the United States will perhaps push more stimulus into the market, whether that be in the form of the reserve banks or their central banks cutting interest rates or perhaps pumping more money into those economies, or perhaps government and legislature pushing in a little bit more funds to small businesses to try and get them to continuously function at high speed as well. So we'll see how that fares throughout the rest of the day. For now, pretty flat at 16 Rand and 67 cents. Back above 19 Rand though is the euro at 19.09, and back above 21 is the pound. It's 21 Rand and 5 cents there. Bright Kumala from Vestact Asset Management joins us now as we get to unpack this market picture just a little bit more. Bright, thank you so much for the time. It's been a market where I suppose one could look at the more COVID-19 cases can kind of determine where you'll sit for the day, even though it doesn't follow the economy word for word.
Correct. I mean, the market follows its own, the beat of its own drum. So looking at COVID-19 cases or some historical charts won't really help you much. We tend to agree that what usually does drive share prices mostly, except for short-term news, on the negative side and on the positive side, it's usually, the growth of dividends and the growth in earnings, of which both in the local fund have been very, very skimpy. And that explains why our market is where it's at in the local front. In the offshore front, looking at the New York Stock Exchange or the Nasdaq has been pushed mostly by those tech counters who have benefited from, working from home and entertaining ourselves from home as a result.
There's also been the earnings news, of course, out of the United States then, right? And that has been of keen interest. BlackRock coming out with their set of earnings, beating estimates then, particularly of Wall Street. So it does mean that investors were perhaps pumping into those bonds there on that side of the world.
You're quite correct. You're quite right. I mean, the quarterly profits are up 21%. Like you're saying, that's due to investors basically moving a lot of funds, in the second quarter towards more fixed income-like assets. And then as a result, we saw basically year on year BlackRock increasing their assets under management from 6.84 trillion US dollars. I'm trying to compute that in my mind to 7.3 trillion US dollars. Massive. Basically, it added the entire South African asset management space by almost 4 times or 5 times. That's how much the assets under management have increased. But this is a big company, and obviously, like you say, most of their stuff is very cheap, low cost, and with the big push to go into low cost, cheap indexing type products, they become the biggest beneficiary of that.
Yeah. Let's bring things locally then and bring them back here to South Africa. ArcelorMittal SA said to incur even more job losses. Initially, in the start of this year, they said 1,000 jobs have to go in order to cut costs, but COVID-19 has certainly made things worse, showing as well then that the construction industry and the steel manufacturing industry is certainly suffering.
Correct. I mean, these are the businesses that are very cyclical in their nature. They depend, especially on the construction side, they depend on, they book, depending on how big their book is, their projects book. On the steel side, steel has been through a cyclical decline for a very long time. Since, there hasn't been many infrastructure, budgets, or infrastructure, from big countries like China, for example, in the early 2000s, where they were, going from industrial into, converting those bundus, so to say, into more cities. And it's unfortunate that COVID-19 hits these kinds of businesses. And then you find NUMSA, for example, saying they're going to, Toy and stand outside of these plants in Vanderbilt Park, Vereeniging, Newcastle, Pretoria, etc., to make sure that their people still have jobs. But even if they do have jobs, if the company can't make the sales, if there's no demand for their product, it makes no sense to have all of these people. These people will just be standing on the production line doing absolutely nothing. So it makes no sense. It's a very unfortunate place that these businesses find themselves in.
Yeah. All right. We also have Invicta, though, right, which becomes quite interesting. 607 million rand for 4 companies that they're willing to sell off. It seems that company needs to offload and doing much the same as the rest of the world, I suppose.
Yeah, COVID-19 again is a problem, but here it's COVID-19 and the fact that they've got a balance sheet that's has a lot of debt in it. It's very debt-ridden. And as a result, some of this debt is very expensive, and they want to relieve the balance sheet of this expensive debt. And it makes sense to sell some of those businesses that, they can get the most cash out of. And as a result, like you said, 600 and something million rands that they're going to receive from those businesses. They're selling to a crowd called CNH Industrials, which is not a South African company, as I can understand. Part of the businesses that they're selling is Landbo Parts. It's about 3 distributors from replacement parts for farming equipment, agricultural and industrial equipment, earth moving and construction equipment. So it's basically mostly just getting rid of the distribution side of their businesses. Yeah. So they'll just stick to the the importing and the manufacturing of the business. Yeah.
Right. Always great catching up with you, man, and finding out a little bit more about that market movement and hearing your insights as well. Thank you so much for the time. Bright Kumalo there from Vestact Asset Management joining us via Skype.